Hey there everyone, meteorologist Chris Mulcahy here. New update on Hurricane Dorian. 150 mile per hour sustained winds. Most recent update, that's only 7 miles per hour away from Category 5 strength. Now at this point, this stage in the game, this is a catastrophic storm. So a difference of 5-10 miles per hour is going to make a whole lot of difference. This is the most recent update from the National Hurricane Center. Now 415 miles east of West Palm Beach, Florida. It's slowing down. That's one of the big changes. Also, another look at our Saffir-Simpson scale. As I mentioned, 150 miles per hour to 157. No matter what, that is going to be producing catastrophic damage if it makes direct landfall at that wind speed. So here are the changes from the 8 a.m. update. One, the biggest one, the track. Each model run is pushing this thing further and further east. That's great news. By the way, the Charlotte area is not going to be affected. This did turn into more of a coastal concern for the Carolinas because of that easterly track, but it looks like that eye wall should, at this point, stay offshore. But a lot of things can change, but it's generally trending east. Wind speed also picking up. It's now 5 miles per hour faster for sustained winds, 20 mile per hour gusts, and our movement is much slower. So that means that this eventually is going to almost stall around Bermuda, the northern parts of it, the Bahamas, excuse me. That is going to allow for significant rainfall, even up to about 18 inches of rain. So here's where we're at. I think that we could approach Category 5 strength within the next 24 hours. It does look like it's going to weaken slightly. Still a major hurricane, Category 4, as it's brushing the northern parts of the Bahamas. Here's the big change. This time yesterday, it was looking like a direct impact for the state of Florida, right around West Palm Beach. Now we start to see that hook. We always knew that this was going to take more of a westerly track and then it was going to take more of a northerly track. It's all because of the steering currents. Now at this point, it looks like the eye, the center, and the worst part of this storm will stay off the Florida coast. But it is going to be a lot closer to the Carolina coast. The previous update that we had this much further west, closer to Charleston, where it could have even made landfall around South Carolina. Now, if there is going to be an eye wall landfall, that's going to be closer to North Carolina, closer to Wilmington or the Outer Banks. But recent trends are pushing this a lot further off towards the east. Also, our wind radius is pretty significant. The yellow right here is tropical storm force winds. The reason why I'm going to focus on that is since we might not necessarily have all hurricane force winds make contact with the coast, watch what's going to happen with those tropical storm force winds. This will likely expand, by the way, as this will weaken slightly from a 4 to a 3, so maybe a 2 right off the coast. But this means from Wednesday to Thursday, we're seeing pretty consistent and persistent tropical storm force winds along the South Carolina coast and then the North Carolina coast as well. Category 2, borderline Category 3 still as it's crossing closer to North Carolina. Now again, I'm going to repeat myself. If we can get this to move even a few miles further off towards the east, that's going to be a big difference as far as wind speed goes. But we still have storm surge and a lot of rain to be concerned about. Taking a close look at our spaghetti plots. Now, when I got into work earlier this morning, our 2 a.m. run was showing several of these along the Florida coast. Now, all of them, except for this one, don't worry about that guy, is keeping it off the Florida coast. A few hours ago, there were a lot more runs that were pushing it near Charleston. Now they're pushing it even further out to sea. If we can keep that trend, that is great news and a great scenario for us. Regardless, the way that this storm motion is pushing, the strongest part of the storm, the maximum impact, will be off the coast regardless. The reason why with this is the way a hurricane circulates. When it matches up with the direction that it's moving, those are the strongest winds. When it goes against the movement, that's usually the weaker winds, but the stronger storm surge. So that storm surge, as this is lifting up a bunch of water, throwing it towards the United States, we could see a lot of coastal flooding all the way from Florida up through the Outer Banks. And it's also the right side in general that has strong winds. Even though the back left is the weakest, it is still dangerous. A dangerous situation because of that water, because our wave heights are going to be significant, peaking to around 30, 40 feet off the coast. So boating, of course, a terrible idea, but this could crash waves upwards to 10 to 15 feet, even in certain sections of the Carolina coast. So yes, even though this is pushing further out east, we still have storm surge and a lot of rain to be worried about. looking along the Carolina coast, our elevations range anywhere from 7 feet upwards to about 20 feet. And that's where Charleston is, about 19-foot elevation. That is still floodworthy as far as any floodwaters go, and any storm surge will be associated with it. And you can see the amount of rain that could be developing with this. Anything in the yellow is alluding to a fact of a range of about 10 inches of rain. Those pinks and those grays showing over 20 inches of rain. And the speed, how fast this moves, that was the big player with Matthew. This was earlier this morning taking a very similar off the Florida coast path to what we saw with Matthew, but Matthew was so slow moving through this area from Georgia to North and South Carolina that it produced a tremendous amount of flooding. If we can get this thing to fly as it looks like it's going to do, that is going to limit the amount of rain, the flooding, but flooding is going to be regardless from this unless we can push it way, way off the coast. So our Euro and our GFS model are matching up for the most part up through Sunday. Now here's the difference. GFS really starts to fly ahead of the Euro, where it stalls out over the Bahamas a little bit longer, but the GFS keeping that eye wall just off the coast, kind of close to where the National Hurricane Center was predicting their general path, and then the Euro's right behind it, and eventually they both push off out into the Atlantic by the time you hit late Friday. Now, what I truly think is going to happen is a lot of this is going to stay off the coast. I'm still concerned about that storm surge, and we'll have the numbers within the next 24 hours about what we really can expect. 48 hours we'll have a better estimate, but I still had to put us into the set range from Wilmington down to Charleston, Savannah, Brunswick, down to Jacksonville to have a plan in place. Likely, it's going to continue to trend further off towards the east, but if it stays right where it is, we bank on the current path that is set in place, we are looking at flooding rains, flooding storm surge, tropical storm to Category 1 force winds along the Carolina coast. Again, things will likely change. We've seen a lot of changes over the last 24 hours. In the meantime, I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy. We'll continue to keep you updated online. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, as well as with Aisha, Brad, and Larry, and we'll have our newscast at 6 o'clock. Take care.